If someone had asked me a year ago what the next 10 years of my life were going to look like, I would have painted you a pretty picture. Me, Elijah Reese, steady as a rock. House paid off before 45. Maybe a kid or two if Denise ever came around to the idea. Barbecues in the backyard. 4th of July fireworks. Trips to Lake Michigan. Ice cream dripping down our wrist in the sun. Nothing flashy. Nothing wild. Just good. Normal. Stable. But life's funny. It doesn't send you a postcard saying, "Hey buddy, your wife's about to kick your heart off a cliff." No warning label. No memo. Just the slow, creeping sense that something's off, and the real kicker? You won't even notice until it's way too late. It started small, like these things always do. Little things. Dumb things. Denise started parking on the opposite side of the driveway. You think I'm joking? I'm not. For 6 years, she parked on the right. Suddenly, she's on the left. Every morning, backing out crooked, like she's in a hurry to leave. Then there was the music. Denise used to blast that old country stuff, Patsy Cline, George Strait, stuff that made you feel like you were sitting on a porch somewhere with a lemonade in hand. No? She was into pop songs about finding yourself and new beginnings. I couldn't pull into the garage without hearing some 20-year-old auto-tuned weirdo wailing about chasing dreams. And the yoga pants. Lord help me, the yoga pants. Not that I'm complaining, but when your wife suddenly owns more spandex than jeans and every outfit looks like she's ready for a photo shoot at Planet Fitness, well, a guy notices. When I joked about it one night, she just laughed and said, "Self-care, babe. Maybe you should try it." Yeah, thanks, Denise. Maybe after I clock my 60 hours this week. And yet, even then, I told myself it was nothing. Marriage isn't a fairy tale. People change. You roll with it. That's the lie good men tell themselves right before they get blindsided. It got harder to ignore when she started scheduling these nights out with her new friends from the gym. Every Friday night, like clockwork, she'd bolt out the door smelling like coconut lotion and ambition. And me? I'd be sitting on the couch, watching reruns of some crime show, sipping a warm beer, telling myself it was healthy for her to have a life outside our marriage. That it was good for her. Meanwhile, the pit in my stomach grew a little bigger each time she left. If you asked Denise, she'd tell you we had the perfect life. 2 cars in the driveway. Health insurance. Dental. A nice little Cape Cod house with white shutters and a lawn I mowed religiously every Saturday morning. On paper? Picture perfect. In real life? I was starting to feel like a guest in my own home. You know how they say you can sense a storm coming before you see the clouds? That's what it felt like. Sitting across from her at dinner, talking about nothing, the spaces between our words getting bigger and colder. Kisses that landed somewhere between a favor and a habit. Long silences that nobody bothered to fill anymore. But I didn't push. Because you don't want to be that guy, right? The insecure husband accusing his wife of things he can't even prove. So I let it ride. Until the day the universe decided to stop whispering and start slapping me across the face. It was a Wednesday. Nothing special. Just me, home early from work, because the new guy they hired couldn't read an email right, and I ended up redoing half the project. I was ticked off, tired, and hungry. Denise was supposed to be at some volunteer event. Instead, I pulled into the driveway and found her car parked sideways, her gym bag tossed halfway across the front seat like she'd been in a rush. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house was dead quiet except for the sound of the dishwasher humming. And something else. Something. Faint. Laughing. Soft, low laughing. I didn't jump to conclusions. Maybe she had a friend over. Maybe it was the TV. But my gut, the same gut that had kept me alive long enough to dodge layoffs, bad investments, and one truly disastrous bachelor party in Vegas, told me to keep walking. So I did. Past the living room. Down the hall. To our bedroom. And there it was. The sound again. Laughter. A whisper. Then nothing. I stood there, hand on the door, heart beating way too hard for a guy just getting home from work. But I didn't open it. Nope. Instead, I backed away, slow and careful, like the ground in front of me was about to give out. I went back to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall for about 20 minutes. When Denise finally came out, her hair a little messier than usual, her cheeks flushed in a way no volunteer event could explain, she acted like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Hey babe," she chirped, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "How was your day?" I just smiled. Because that's what you do when you realize the person you built your life around is lying to your face. You smile. You pretend you're too dumb to notice. You buy yourself some time. Because now it wasn't about catching her. It was about how. I wasn't going to be the guy who got emotional and started shouting. I wasn't going to throw a fit and beg her to tell me the truth. Nope. If Denise wanted to play games, she was about to find out she married a man who could play a hell of a lot smarter. And if she thought I was just going to roll over and take it, she had no idea who she was dealing with. The trick about living with a liar is simple. You gotta let them think they're winning. Smile at the right times. Nod your head. Pretend like you're still the same guy who believed in movie nights and Christmas morning pancakes. Meanwhile, you keep your eyes open. I gave myself a rule after that night. No accusations. No drama. No desperate late night digging through her phone like some washed-up detective in a bad Lifetime movie. I wasn't going to be the guy sobbing into his whiskey, begging a cheater for answers. If Denise was running a side hustle with someone else, I was going to find out without ever letting her see it coming. So I played dumb. I kissed her on the cheek before work. I sent the "hope you're having a good day" texts. I even picked up her favorite stupid almond milk creamer like nothing had changed. Because the second she smelled suspicion, she'd just get smarter. Denise wanted me comfortable. I was going to make damn sure she thought I was half asleep. But man, that was easier said than done. The worst part wasn't even pretending. It was the not knowing. It was sitting across from her at dinner, pretending to listen to her ramble about some gym fundraiser while my brain was busy building 1,000 different horror movies in my head. Was it a guy from her gym? Someone from work? A new neighbor I hadn't even noticed? The imagination is a real jerk when it's working against you. But then something weird happened. One Thursday night, Denise left for one of her group fitness classes, which now happened like 4 times a week, conveniently around 7:30 p.m. prime. I'm supposed to be at the gym hours. I wasn't even mad anymore. It was almost funny. I figured I'd use the time to finally patch up that gutter in the backyard that kept knocking loose every time it rained. While digging around the garage for the ladder, I noticed her car keys sitting on the workbench. Not in her purse. Not on the kitchen counter where she usually tossed them. Just sitting there, like an invitation. And taped to the keyring? A little folded receipt. Not tucked in. Not hidden. Just taped. A receipt from Riverstone Auto. Date: that afternoon. Service: full detailing, interior and exterior. Funny thing is, Denise was supposed to be at work all day. Big conference call, back-to-back meetings, according to her. And yet somehow, she found the time to get her car detailed? If you're thinking that's nothing, you clearly don't know Denise. Denise didn't even clean out her cup holders unless there was a global pandemic forcing her into lockdown. Her idea of car maintenance was hoping the check engine light went away on its own. I held the receipt for a long second, turning it over. No credit card info. Just the service description. I tossed the keys back down and went outside, standing by the mailbox, trying to figure it out. Why clean the car? Unless maybe she didn't want certain things found inside it. Things that didn't belong to me. I didn't want a spiral. I wanted proof. I paced the driveway, back and forth, until an idea hit me. The auto shop. Riverstone Auto was a local place, about 15 minutes down the road. I'd driven past it a million times, a dusty lot with a row of faded flags and an open garage door. You don't get your car detailed there unless you're trying to erase something. Something messy. Something you don't want seen. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my truck keys and headed straight there. When I pulled into the lot, the kid working the desk looked about 12 years old and high on Red Bull. I leaned casually against the counter. "Hey, man," I said, putting on my best friendly face. My wife was in earlier. She forgot to ask, "Did you guys happen to find anything in her car while you were cleaning it? Jewelry, paperwork, anything weird like that?" The kid blinked at me, scratching his head. You talking about the white Lexus?" "Bingo." "Yeah," I said. "White Lexus." He chewed his lip. "Yeah, man. Actually, we did find some stuff. Manager's got it in the back. Standard policy. You want to see?" "Would really appreciate it," I said, smiling. 2 minutes later, he came back holding a clear Ziploc bag. Inside, a crumpled paper napkin, an empty water bottle, a few coins, and a parking stub. A parking stub that said, "Midtown Executive Suites, validated parking. Date: last Friday night. Time: 9:37 p.m. I felt my whole body go cold. Executive Suites? That wasn't a gym. That wasn't a fundraiser. That wasn't anywhere Denise had any earthly reason to be on a Friday night. It wasn't a hotel either. It was worse. I knew Midtown Executive Suites. It was one of those mixed-use buildings, commercial spaces downstairs, fancy business apartments upstairs, short-term rentals, hourly access, private elevators. Exactly the kind of place you rent if you want to meet someone without bumping into your neighbor's Aunt Carol at the Marriott buffet. And there it was, in my hand. Time-stamped. Proof. All from a stupid forgotten parking stub. I handed the bag back to the kid like it was a live grenade and muttered thanks before heading back to my truck. I sat there for a good while, gripping the steering wheel, feeling like my brain was trying to climb out of my skull. No wonder she had the car detailed. No wonder she was suddenly into hot yoga and personal growth playlists. No wonder she looked at me lately like she was seeing a dead man. Because in her mind, I already was. Denise had made a choice. She just forgot to clean up all the breadcrumbs. When I pulled out of the lot, my plan was already forming. I wasn't gonna scream. I wasn't gonna cry. I wasn't even gonna argue. If Denise wanted to rewrite our story behind my back, fine. I was about to give her an ending she'd never see coming. I didn't rush home that night. I drove slow. Real slow. Back roads, no music. Windows down even though the air had that sticky Midwest humidity that makes your skin feel like it's wearing a wet sock. I needed time to think. Because what I was about to do, I wasn't going to get a do-over. The way I figured it, I had two choices. I could blow up. Storm in. Start throwing accusations around like a drunk at a bar fight. Or I could be smarter. Cooler. Give Denise just enough rope to hang herself without even realizing she was tying the knot. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the house looked peaceful. Lights on in the kitchen. Porch light buzzing with a few lazy moths. You'd never guess there was a knife buried between my ribs. Denise's car was parked neatly in her new favorite crooked way, the one she never corrected anymore. I walked inside, set my keys down on the hall table, and called out like everything was fine. Hey, babe. You home? Yeah, she chirped from the kitchen, like a sitcom wife on cue. I'm just finishing up dishes. Dishes. Because nothing says faithful spouse like scrubbing a few cereal bowls after cheating on your husband in a midtown bachelor pad. I kicked off my boots, made my way to the kitchen, and there she was, wiping down the counter with a little too much enthusiasm. Wearing that old Michigan State hoodie I bought her 6 years ago. Trying way too hard to look normal. She smiled. A real smile, not one of those fake ones you flash at the dentist. Long day? She asked, leaning back against the counter, the sponge dangling from her hand like a limp prop. You have no idea, I said, grabbing a beer from the fridge and popping it open without looking at her. This was it. The stage was set. Now it was just a matter of letting her step into the trap. You know, I said, taking a sip, I was thinking we should do something fun this weekend. Maybe get out of town. Just you and me. Her eyebrows shot up like I just announced I wanted to join the circus. Really? She said. You never suggest that kind of thing. I shrugged. Yeah, well, life's short, right? She smiled, but it was tight around the edges. Her mind was already spinning, trying to figure out if she could fit her little side project into her busy weekend schedule. Where were you thinking? She asked, voice casual. Maybe downtown, I said, fighting the urge to grin. You know, stay somewhere nice. Like Midtown Executive Suites. Heard it's real cozy. The second the words left my mouth, I saw it. The crack. Tiny. Instant. Gone in a blink if you weren't looking for it. Her whole body stiffened for just a fraction of a second before she covered it with a fake laugh. Midtown? Isn't that mostly for business travelers? She said, turning back to the counter, pretending to scrub an invisible stain. Yeah, I said, stepping closer, watching her shoulders tense. But I figured, since you're already such a frequent flyer there, you could show me around. Another heartbeat of silence. The hum of the fridge the only sound between us. Slowly, she turned to face me, sponge still in hand like a shield. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned back against the opposite counter, crossed my arms, and smiled. It means I found your little souvenir, I said. Parking stub. Last Friday night. Midtown Executive Suites. Ring any bells? Her face went pale. Not dramatically, not some big soap opera gasp, just drained. Like someone pulled the plug and all the blood ran south for the winter. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, and damn if she didn't almost sell it. Almost. Save it, I said, my voice calm enough to scare even myself. I'm not here for a confession. I'm not even here for an apology. I'm just letting you know. I know. Denise swallowed hard, setting the sponge down like it was made of glass. Elijah, don't. I cut in, holding up a hand. Seriously. Whatever you're about to say. Don't. She bit her lip, eyes shining like maybe if she cried hard enough, this could still end with a hug and a heart-to-heart. I took another sip of beer, set it down on the counter, and smiled. You know the worst part? I said. It's not even the cheating. It's the lying. It's the fact that you could sit across from me every night, eat the food I pay for, sleep under the roof I built, and still look me dead in the eye like I'm too stupid to notice. Tears welled up in her eyes now, and she stepped toward me. I made a mistake, she whispered. Please, Elijah, let's talk about this. We can fix it. I actually chuckled, and shook my head. You think I want to fix this? I said, staring at her like she was a stranger. You think I'm going to fight for a woman who treats loyalty like a coupon she forgot to use? She opened her mouth, closed it again. Who is he? I asked casually. She hesitated, big mistake, then said, it doesn't matter. Bingo, I said, pushing off the counter. That's all I needed to hear. I walked past her, heading for the stairs. Where are you going? She called after me, voice rising. Packing, I said over my shoulder. Weekend trip. You know, since you're going to have the house all to yourself. But she started. But nothing, I said, turning on the first step. You chose your fun. You don't get to be surprised when the bill shows up. She stood there, frozen, as I climbed the stairs 2 at a time. In our bedroom, I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, started tossing clothes and without even folding them. I didn't need much. Just enough to get me out of here. Enough to give her the silence she so obviously deserved. As I zipped the bag shut, I caught a glimpse of our wedding photo on the dresser. Me in a rented tux, her in a second-hand dress we thought was the most beautiful thing in the world back then. Smiling like idiots. Like two people who actually believed promises meant something. I picked up the frame, stared at it for a second, then set it face down. Time to move on. I walked back downstairs, bag slung over my shoulder. Denise was still standing there, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold in all the regret leaking out of her pores. Where are you going to go? She asked, voice small. I smiled. Somewhere you can't reach. And with that, I walked out the door, letting it shut behind me with a click that sounded a hell of a lot like freedom. Freedom doesn't come with a parade. It doesn't come with a marching band or a gold medal. Freedom is standing in a cheap motel room with a duffel bag that smells like your garage, staring at a stained carpet and thinking, well, at least no one's lying to my face anymore. I checked into the Lakeview Motel, a place so depressing it should have come with a complimentary therapy session and paid cash. The old guy behind the desk didn't even blink. He just handed me a room key with duct tape on it and told me not to break the ice machine. That first night, I sat on the rock-hard bed, stared at the ceiling, and let it hit me. I had no plan. No apartment lined up. No backup. All I had was a parking stub, a cheating wife, and a lifetime's worth of rage simmering just under my skin. And that's when it clicked. I didn't need a plan. Denise had already written the ending for me. I just needed to deliver it. First thing the next morning, I drove into town and hit the bank. The one where Denise and I had our joint accounts, emphasis on had. See, Denise never cared much for the finances. She liked buying scented candles and inspirational throw pillows, but budgeting? Balancing? That was my job. And my job had just become a whole lot simpler. I walked up to the counter, smiled at the teller, a woman named Gail who used to bake cookies for the staff, and said, Hi there. I need to separate my accounts. Divorce pending. Gail blinked twice, but didn't ask questions. Small towns survive on gossip, but even they have rules about asking a man why his hands are shaking when he slides over his ID. An hour later, my paycheck was rerouted to a brand new, Denise-free account. The savings account? Frozen. Credit cards? Canceled. The mortgage payment? Suspended, legally, pending division of assets. By noon, Denise's life was about to get a lot more interesting. Second stop. My buddy Nick. Nick runs a moving company. Nothing fancy, 3 trucks, a few guys who know how to lift with their knees. But Nick owed me one from way back when I bailed him out after his bachelor party went sideways involving a goat, a police cruiser, and a very understanding judge. Need a crew, I told him, leaning on the counter in his grimy little office. He grinned, wiping his hands on a towel. Whatcha moving? My past, I said. He didn't even ask for details. Just said, Saturday. Noon. Perfect. Third stop. The lawyer. Now, I'm not some big fan of dragging private business into courtrooms, but Denise made it real simple. You cheat, you forfeit the right to negotiate nicely. I sat in the ugly lobby of a strip mall law office flipping through a sticky magazine until my name got called. The lawyer, a guy named Howard who looked like he hadn't seen the inside of a gym since the Reagan administration, leaned back in his chair and listened while I laid it all out. Parking stub. Lies. History. Everything. He nodded, taking notes with an expensive-looking pen. Well, he said when I finished, good news is, she's made this easy for you. Adultery's still a thing on the books around here. Bad news is, you'll need proof if you want to keep the house cleanly. I pulled out my phone and set it on the desk. Already working on it, I said. Because while Denise was busy posing in her yoga pants for Instagram and pretending her life was perfect, I had been doing a little posing myself. Right after freezing the accounts, I logged into the shared laptop back at the house remotely, the one she never bothered to password protect. 2 clicks and I was in her cloud backups. Photos. Messages. Emails. It was all there. All of it. Her and some guy named Brent. Selfies in front of Midtown Executive Suites. Text about how hot last night was and can't wait for next Friday. Emails setting up little rendezvous points like teenagers too dumb to know anything digital can last forever. I had enough proof to wallpaper the courthouse. Howard smiled wide when he saw it. Son, he said, we're about to make her regret ever learning how to text. Saturday came fast. Faster than I thought it would. Nick and his guys showed up at noon sharp, just like he promised. Big box truck idling in front of the house, right where the neighbors could get a good look. And oh, they were looking. Mrs. Abernathy across the street was practically fogging up her window trying to see what was going on. Good. Let them see. Let the story spread faster than Denise could make up a lie. I had made a very specific list. Clothes, packed. Important documents, packed. Tools, packed. Mementos, packed. Everything else? Leave it. I wasn't taking the couch we picked out when we still believed in each other. I wasn't taking the dining table where we used to plan vacations that would never happen. She could keep the house. Keep the debt. Keep the empty shell she turned it into. I was taking the only thing that mattered, my freedom. By the time Denise pulled into the driveway, early from yoga, judging by the fresh Lululemon bag on her passenger seat, the truck was half-loaded. She slammed out of the car, furious. Elijah, what the hell is this? I didn't yell. Didn't even raise my voice. I just smiled and said, just making sure you've got plenty of room for Brent's stuff. Her face crumpled like someone stepped on it. You can't just leave, she hissed, glancing at the neighbors now openly staring from their porches. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear. Watch me. I handed her a thick envelope, divorce papers, freshly printed and ready to roll, and turned to Nick. Let's wrap it up, boys. And then, because life sometimes hands you gifts when you least expect it, Denise did exactly what I was hoping she'd do. She chased after me, right into the front yard, shrieking about how I was throwing everything away and how we could work through this. Right there, in front of everybody. Full meltdown. The same woman who couldn't tell me the truth in our own kitchen was now screaming confessions loud enough for the next zip code to hear. Nick caught my eye and gave a little salute. I smiled, climbed into the passenger seat of the truck, and let them drive me away. Freedom isn't clean. It's messy and loud and it hurts like hell. But sitting in that truck, watching my old life shrink in the rearview mirror, I realized something. Sometimes you don't need to burn bridges. Sometimes you just walk away so clean, the bridge sets itself on fire behind you. I figured she'd call. I just didn't think it would happen so fast. Barely 24 hours after Nick's truck pulled away, my phone lit up with a number I knew better than my own. I didn't answer. Let it ring out while I sat on the tiny balcony of my crummy motel room, drinking cheap gas station coffee and watching the sun beat the life out of the asphalt. She called again the next day. And the next. Texts, too. Long, rambling paragraphs about making mistakes and needing closure, and how things got out of control. As if infidelity was something that just happened to people like an unexpected rainstorm. By the 4th day, she switched tactics. One-word texts. Please. Talk. Need you. Pathetic. But curiosity's a disease. And somewhere deep down, a part of me wanted to see how far she'd fall. So I gave her one chance. One meeting. Neutral ground. No house, no memories. I picked the diner out by Route 19, the one with the cracked leather booths and the pie that tasted like regret. Nobody went there unless they were out of options or out of gas. Fitting, right? I texted her the time, 7 p.m. And just before 7, I walked in, ordered a black coffee, and waited. She showed up 2 minutes later, sunglasses on even though the sun was basically gone. Denise Reese, the woman who could cheat, lie, and still worry about appearances. She slid into the booth across from me without a word, pulling off her sunglasses like she was revealing some deep truth. I didn't say anything, didn't offer a smile, didn't ask how she was. I let her stew. She looked rough, tired, makeup thicker than usual, hair pulled back too tight like she thought maybe if she stretched her face hard enough, she could erase the guilt. She cleared her throat. "I'm glad you agreed to meet," she said, voice too soft, like we were sharing a secret instead of cleaning up a crime scene. I sipped my coffee and waited. "I've been thinking," she started, fiddling with the paper napkin like it was a ticking bomb. "About everything. About us." I gave her a slow blink that could have been mistaken for interest if you were desperate enough. "I made a mistake," she said, voice breaking on the word like it was supposed to mean something. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It didn't mean anything." I smiled, just enough to make her uncomfortable. "You spent 6 months sneaking around for something that didn't mean anything?" She flinched. "Good. I didn't want to lose us," she said quickly. "I got lost. I wasn't thinking clearly. Brent, he's not. It wasn't about him. It was about me." I set my coffee down carefully, like I was trying real hard not to throw it at the wall. "You think I care about your existential crisis?" I said, voice low. "You think I'm sitting here because I want to hear how you accidentally tripped and fell into someone else's bed?" Tears welled up. She blinked fast, trying to blink them away, but one slipped free. "Another performance. Another lie." "You don't understand," she said. "I've been unhappy for a long time." I almost laughed. "Almost. Unhappy," I repeated, leaning in. "You had a mortgage you didn't pay. A husband who did the laundry, fixed the gutters, paid for your yoga classes. You had a life people would kill for. You weren't unhappy, Denise. You were bored." She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "You wanted fireworks every damn day. Thought if the world didn't fall at your feet with rose petals and Instagram likes, something must be wrong." I leaned back, letting the words settle like dust. "You didn't want a husband," I said. "You wanted a fan club." She broke then, full-on crying, ugly sobs she couldn't control. The waitress came by, took one look at the disaster happening at booth 3, and veered off toward the kitchen. Denise wiped her face with the napkin, smearing her mascara into raccoon territory. "I know I messed up," she choked out. "I know I hurt you. But we have history, Elijah. We have a life." She reached across the table for my hand. I didn't move. Let her hand hang there in the air like a broken promise. Finally, she dropped it. "I can change," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy. Counseling. Anything." I stared at her for a long minute. Not because I was considering it, but because I was savoring the silence, the look in her eyes when she realized I wasn't coming to save her. "You think this is a movie?" I said. "You think there's a speech you can give that makes me forget the nights you came home smiling from someone else's bed?" She opened her mouth again, desperate, but I cut her off. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "That's the worst part for you, isn't it? That I don't even care enough to hate you." She crumpled then, full body shudder, shoulders shaking. I stood up, tossing a 5 on the table even though I hadn't touched the second cup of coffee the waitress brought. "Good luck, Denise," I said quietly. "You're gonna need it." And without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out. The air outside hit like a slap. Hot. Heavy. But I breathed it in like it was the first real breath I'd taken in months. Behind me, through the cracked glass of the diner, I could still see her. Small. Broken. Alone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small too. I felt free. There's this thing nobody tells you about starting over. It's boring as hell at first. You think it's gonna feel like fireworks and fresh starts, like a damn car commercial, guy in a leather jacket driving down the highway, hair blowing in the wind, leaving all his problems behind. Nah. It feels like sitting in a folding chair in a barely furnished apartment, eating gas station sandwiches off a cardboard box because your real table's still at your cheating ex-wife's house. It feels like paying bills by yourself and realizing half the stuff you used to buy was never even for you. It feels like silence. Real silence. Not the heavy, bitter kind that used to fill the house when Denise was mad at me about something she couldn't say out loud. Not the fake silence where you both pretend the elephant in the room isn't standing on your chest. Actual, peaceful silence. I rented a place about 10 miles outside town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a sad little patch of backyard that could barely fit a lawn chair. The paint peeled in places. The front steps creaked when you stepped on them. It was perfect. I bought a couch off a guy on Facebook Marketplace for $80. Picked up a cheap TV from the pawn shop down on Lincoln. The only thing new was the mattress, and let me tell you, there is no better feeling than sleeping on a bed no one else has ever shared with you. The first few nights, I didn't even unpack half my stuff. Just sat there, drinking cheap beer, staring at the walls like maybe they'd tell me what to do next. Turns out, you don't need a grand plan. You just need to keep moving. Denise tried a few more times. Voicemails, texts, even an email, as if changing platforms would somehow change the message. They all said the same thing. I'm sorry. I miss you. I can be better. One even ended with, you're my home. If that wasn't the saddest thing I ever read, I don't know what is. I didn't respond. Not once. She didn't deserve my anger. She didn't even deserve my closure. She had made her choices. Now she got to live with them. Funny thing about small towns, word travels faster than Amazon Prime. Within a month, everybody knew about the divorce. Everybody knew about Brent, too. Apparently Brent wasn't exactly husband material. Didn't take long for Denise to find out the hard way. Rumor had it he ghosted her 3 weeks after I moved out. Packed up and moved states, some job offer in Texas, apparently. No forwarding address. No tearful goodbye. Just gone. Karma's real. It just doesn't always show up when you're watching for it. Sometimes it waits until you're already drowning before it throws the final brick. One Saturday morning, about 2 months after I moved out, I ran into Mrs. Abernathy at the grocery store. She blocked the cereal aisle like she had a legal right to the Frosted Flakes and gave me that squint-eyed look old ladies save for scandal. You holding up okay, Elijah? She asked, voice syrupy sweet. I smiled, grabbed my cereal, and said, never better. Which was true. Not perfect. Not movie-ending perfect. But better. Better because I didn't wake up every day wondering if the person next to me was lying. Better because I wasn't pretending anymore. Better because freedom, even when it's messy and ugly, beats a prison with white picket fences. I didn't date right away. Not because I was broken. Not because I didn't think I could. But because after spending years loving someone who didn't deserve it, you gotta take a minute to remember what it feels like to be whole by yourself. I started small. Bought a second-hand bike and started riding the trails out by Miller's Creek. Started cooking real meals again, badly, at first, and laughing at myself when the smoke alarm went off. Found a dog at the shelter, a half-blind mutt with one ear that flopped the wrong way, and took him home before I could think about it too much. Named him Rusty. Rusty didn't care about my divorce. Rusty didn't ask awkward questions. Rusty just wanted belly rubs and walks and a spot on the couch next to me. Best roommate I ever had. I even started fixing up the backyard. Tore out the scraggly bushes, planted a few things that might or might not survive depending on how much rain we got. Built a little fire pit with my own 2 hands, hauling stones from the creek like some idiot pioneer. On good nights, I'd sit out there with a beer, Rusty at my feet, the fire crackling low, and I'd think about everything that had happened. Not with anger. Not with regret. Just acceptance. Life isn't about building a perfect house with someone. It's about being the kind of person who can survive when that house burns down. And me? I was still standing. A little singed. A little rough around the edges. But standing. Denise was just a chapter. Not the whole book. One bad storm doesn't mean you throw out the map and live in fear of clouds forever. You rebuild. You lay new bricks. You keep moving. And maybe, if you're lucky, someday you'll find someone who knows what real love looks like. Not the fireworks, not the Instagram posts, not the gym selfies. Someone who understands that love isn't always shiny. Sometimes it's showing up. Sometimes it's the hard conversations. Sometimes it's staying when it's boring and choosing each other anyway. But until then, I had Rusty. I had my tiny backyard and my terrible cooking. I had my bike and my crappy pawn shop TV. I had peace. And after everything, that was more than enough. Subscribe to the channel